Hello everyone, I'm Roseann Benedict and I'm here today to do a cooking video for you. So actually tonight is a cookbook club for me. I belong to a fabulous cookbook club, and tonight I am making a recipe from this cookbook called Downtown Italian. It's recipes inspired by Italy but created in New York's West Village. And the recipe that I am doing is a recipe that is classic for the part of Italy that borders Switzerland, and which I've been to. But anyway, the name of the recipe is pizzoccheri with Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and Fontina. And I know I just destroyed that type of pasta, but I can't even speak English, let alone Italian. But I am not going to make that pasta anyway because it's a buckwheat pasta. And you know what? If I'm having pasta, I'm having pasta. I'm not having buckwheat pasta. So I'm going to make it with another kind of pasta, which you'll see momentarily. But the sauce and the recipe is with Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and Fontina cheese. So it's a high carb recipe between the pasta and the potatoes. So basically what I'm doing is I got 9 Yukon Gold potatoes, and I'm actually doubling the recipe, but I'm going to tell you the recipe for just one serving of it. So I did 9 potatoes. It calls for 4 cups diced potatoes, and I have gloves on. If you've noticed, I don't usually wear gloves, but if you don't know, I am allergic to raw potatoes. I can eat potatoes anyway, and I love potatoes, but if I touch them when they're raw, I'll start sneezing, my lips will swell, and it's, you know, this whole big thing. So my mom, who's going to be 92 next month, peeled all 9 potatoes for me. I washed them off carefully. Now I diced them all up, and I'm getting ready to prepare them. So what happens next is I take these 4 cups of diced potatoes and put them in a baking sheet, and then I am going to just drizzle them with let's see, how much olive oil. 2 tablespoons of olive oil, give or take. And some salt. I'm just gonna do a couple of little shakes of salt, and then a couple of turns on the pepper mill, make them nice and salty and peppery. And then I am going to pop this in the oven for for about 35 minutes at 350. So just, you know, take your hands with your glove on and just coat the potatoes with a little bit of olive oil. But you're just going to roast these potatoes very quickly till we go on to our next step in the pasta recipe. So I'll be back to you shortly. Okay. So while the potatoes are in the oven cooking, this is a little bit of a labor-intensive pasta recipe. But so we had to peel all those potatoes, dice them all up, stick them in the oven. The next thing they want us to do is get 8 Brussels sprouts, and obviously I'm going to double it for my cookbook club. But you take off the bottom of the Brussels sprout, and then you peel off all the leaves like this. So this would be a good job for my mother to do, since I'm not patient enough to do this. But we're going to, and actually, you know what the recipe said, that the original recipe, yeah, this is labor intensive, but for sure. And you know what, I think next time I probably won't buy the Brussels sprouts. I'll probably use shaved Brussels sprouts to make it easy. Although the leaves are very pretty, right? And they'll cook up nicely. But sorry, to go back to my thought, what they said they use a lot of times in this recipe is cabbage. And so, but instead of cabbage, they're using Brussels sprouts. I like the thought of the Brussels sprouts too. But I am going to do this off camera, not to bore you, and I will come back to you. But just so you know, I have my water boiling for my pasta. I have the potatoes in the oven, and I'm going to peel all these leaves off the Brussels sprouts. So then I'll be back. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that this recipe was a little bit labor intensive, but it's even more labor intensive than I thought. So here are my Brussels sprout leaves. You know, I just peeled. I took a Brussels sprout, I cut off the little tip, I peeled off all the leaves. When I got to the middle, like, you know, the inside, I pretty much just tossed that because it's so hard. I don't think that it's going to work for this recipe, and it doesn't say anything about whether I should keep it or leave it. It just says all the leaves, and that's not really leaves, so I tossed that. But this is 16 Brussels sprouts. Again, next time I would just buy the shaved Brussels sprouts that you get at the grocery store. Trader Joe has them. All the grocery stores have them. The next thing is you're supposed to take two shallots, in my case 4, because I'm doubling the recipe, and julienne them. Every time I slice onions, I always think about when I was the chairperson for the powwow, and I had a group of girls, specifically Chris Tarantino. Big shout out to Chris Tarantino. I always think of you every time I chop onions. She used to have to do hundreds of pounds of onions to chop them for the powwow, so you can have onions on your burgers at the powwow. And like, I couldn't even chop these 4 little shallots, which are very mild, without getting tears and crying. And so I guess it's a little therapeutic, but you know, God bless Chris Tarantino. I don't know how she did it. She, every year for many years, she was the onion queen of the powwow. But anyway, all right, so we have the Brussels sprouts, we have the shallots. It also says to get freshly shaved Fontina cheese. Now, I love Fontina cheese, but Fontina cheese is a soft cheese. And how the heck are you supposed to grate, unless you have a commercial grater, how are you supposed to grate Fontina cheese? Because when you get to the inside part, like the hard part's okay, but when you get to this inside part, it doesn't really grate. It like clumps instead. So I decided to make an executive decision, and I just chopped most of this Fontina cheese. And see, look at on this side, then it begins to clump. It's not really shredded. So I think unless you have a professional grater, you can't grate Fontina cheese. So I just cut it into little tiny, you know, diced pieces of Fontina cheese. It's going to be delicious on the pasta, but I'm not sitting there shredding soft cheese. So, and the last chopping thing we're supposed to do is sage, and it says 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon. Sorry, my dogs are barking. My dogs are barking because one of the girls from my cookbook club just came over to pick up her food that I was supposed to have prepared for 3 o'clock, and it's 3 o'clock and I haven't even gotten it all together yet. So I said to her, come back in an hour. So she said, okay. But anyway, so the next thing is 1 teaspoon and 1 tablespoon of sage leaves, freshly sliced. I love the smell of sage. I don't know what it means by, I guess just sliced this way. Yeah, that looks beautiful with those nice sage leaves. And again, I said to my friend just now, this recipe is so labor intensive. And I guess it wouldn't have been bad if I had prepared ahead of time. Like, you know, I could have peeled the Brussels sprouts last night in front of the TV when I was sitting down relaxing, or have my mother do them when she was relaxing, but I didn't. So, okay, so here's what we do next. I'm gonna take you over to the stove and we're gonna put this stuff together. So I'm over here at the stove. I used my paella pan instead of a regular frying pan because I think with all those potatoes and all those Brussels sprout leaves, I think I need a bigger pan because I'm doubling the recipe. Normally you can just use a regular, you know, regular frying pan, but in my case I'm using the paella pan. So what I'm doing is I put a couple of tablespoons of butter into this pan, and I'm going to put the shallots and the sage in the pan and just get those herbs to, or those flavors to release. And I'm using one of my favorite spoons, wooden spoons. My son Tyler made it. He whittled it. I don't know if you can see it. He did a really good job. It's one of my favorite spoons. So anyway, we're going to just saute these onions and the sage to just release the aromas and get them a little bit softened. And then we'll go on to the next step. My shallots and my sage have cooked down really nicely. And now the next step is to add, generously it says, some salt and pepper. And do that. And then I'm to add the Brussels sprouts. The ones that fall on the floor, either the dog eats or I throw out, just so you know. We're not doing the 10-second rule today. You know what's interesting is this recipe has no garlic in it. And every pasta recipe that I've ever eaten or made always has some sort of garlic in it. But this one does not. Again, most times when I cook on my cooking videos, I just don't really follow a recipe quite so much, but since this is for my cookbook club, I have to follow the recipe exactly. So I added the Brussels sprouts. It says just saute for 1 minute, and then I'm going to add the roasted potatoes, and I did check on those. Wait till you see how good those look. They look really good. And my water's boiling for my pasta, so I'm going to put that in. So let's do that. I actually am going to do tagliatelle. I told you it calls for a recipe of some sort of buckwheat pasta. And I don't know, I'm just not feeling the buckwheat. So I'm going to do this tagliatelle. I'm doing 2 pounds. The recipe only calls for 1 pound, but because I'm doubling the recipe, I'm putting in 2 pounds. So while I'm going to bring out the potatoes, if I can find my pot holder. I hid them on you guys so that you wouldn't see my messy house. But, okay. Oh, these are perfectly roasted. I have to tell you, I did end up turning the oven up to 500 because when I roast vegetables, like, hold on. I have to get the Brussels sprout that fell on the floor, throwing it in the garbage. When I roast vegetables, I put them at a high temperature and I roast them. This said 350. That to me was pretty low and they weren't browning. So, oh, did you see that Brussels sprout pop out of my pan? Anyway, so I am now going to take these roasted potatoes. Look how good they look. I could eat those right now without putting them in the pasta. And I'm going to just put those in with the Brussels sprouts. They smell good. I don't know if you can see me putting them in. I think you can. And I'll scrape this up when I'm off camera to make sure I get every morsel. But that's my potatoes. And it says to just let it cook for another minute, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what else we do. So now we're down to our final steps, and the pasta is cooked. I just tested it, and we are going to move it over. It's interesting, it says it wants you to use a slotted spoon to put the pasta in with the Brussels sprouts. And I think part of that is because it wants some of the water from the pasta. I'm not doing a very good job here. Okay, this would be a blooper thing if I was going to do a blooper. Okay, so let's see. Put that all in there. That's all the pasta. And I'm going to keep the water because if I need some water for the sauce to make it a little thinner, might be too thick, then I'll add that water in a minute. So I put all the pasta in with the Brussels sprouts and the potatoes. I'm just going to give it a little mix. It really does look good. I was a little hesitant about this recipe, But you know, this is what's really fun about being in this cookbook club, is you try things that are not in your regular wheelhouse, you know, something outside of your element. And I think that it's been really good for me, because I was a pretty steak and potato pasta kind of girl, pasta pizza kind of girl, but I've really enjoyed trying some other foods and flavors. So now what I'm going to do is take this and bring it over to my counter. Okay, so I'm back with you, and this, like I said, is my beautiful pasta with potatoes, onions, sage, and Brussels sprouts. And what it says to do now is to get some butter, a couple of tablespoons, put it in there, and then add my, if you were making just a single batch, it would be 1 cup, but since I'm doing a double batch, 2 cups of cheddar cheese, and I'm gonna mix it all up. Here's my other spoon. So you have all that butter and cheese. It really smells great. The girls from my cookbook club, I think, are gonna love this. And it did say, like I told you, we saved some pasta water. If it gets a little thick, my glasses are fogged. If it gets a little thick, we're gonna add some water, and I think I need to. So you just save your pasta water and add that. And you know, because you want the pasta to be wet, you don't want it to be dry. And I think this is really yummy. So how I would serve this is I would get a pasta dish, and I would put some of this in the pasta dish like this, because remember, we still have to add the Fontina cheese that they wanted me to shred. Oh, I'm not going to waste those potatoes that fell on the table. I'm going to put some of this Fontina on top of it and just wait a second for it to cool. Not cool. Yeah, I guess for it to cool. And I'm going to tell you whether this is worth making all that time that, I mean, really, it hasn't been a lot of time. I think it's been an hour, and that was from start to finish. But let's see. Oh my God. I have to tell you, for a pasta with no garlic in it, it's pretty darn good. I got the potato, the Brussels sprout, a piece of the sage, some of the onion, of course the cheese. Okay. I would say you should make it. I think it's a good recipe. So if you want some, come on over. I have some extra. If you want the recipe, you know where to find me. And bon appetit.